another weekly meeting for create a new user-facing theme. Plus, first time this meeting is also combined with the default content idea. So welcome everyone from there as well. So let's start by discussing about the theme. And then after that, let's proceed to the default content. And probably these topics will get a little bit more merged in the future because of, I guess that's probably what's going to happen, that these two ideas will be worked even more closely together because of, at least for me, on the previous meeting that we had with the product management, it looked like we should work on this very, very closely, even more closely than we used to.
Yep. Yeah, that's the impression I got too.
Yeah. And for that reason, it's very good that we are now on one meeting and this is not separated. So what's happened on the theme idea at this point is before the holidays, we had a meeting with the product management. Based on the feed, I have updated some, but since the update for the issue summary, I haven't received any feedback so far. So have you had a chance to read the issue summary? Did you have any comments or any feedback for that? Yep.
So I didn't have any comments apart from the fact that I thought it was generally positive, and I think we're unblocked now.
Unblocked from what?
Unblocked from going ahead with with what we're doing.
So do you think we have agreement on that? Like, has someone signed off on that?
So I'm just judging by the comments in the meeting from Dries, etc., not necessarily by somebody actually officially signing off on, like, as in on an issue or something like that.
Yeah, because I think Dries and Angie mentioned that they would make a comment on this issue after the issue summary update has happened.
Oh, right. I see. Yeah, but I don't think.
Yeah. Just because,
I don't think that blocks us on proceeding. Dries specifically said, whatever you want to do, I'll be okay with that. But he obviously wants visibility, I think, more than anything else.
Is this the result of a newer meeting? Because I think the last place I remember, even just prior to Lori's original update, was regarding Angie's questions and Dries's questions about whether or not the market idea was the correct direction to go, and a couple other things.
Yeah, my take on what Dries said in the last meeting, in the meeting that we had just before. What was the date of that one, Lowry?
Let me check. I think it was December, like 19th or 18th.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. That sounds right to me.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, my take on what Dries said in that meeting was that it was up to us. That he, I think that he had a better sense, from that meeting that the, that the market idea could be done very well. That wasn't his initial kind of, that wasn't his initial sort of preference, but the impression that I got, and he literally actually said, whatever the team decides upon, he's okay with. He just wants visibility into what, you know, and as we
So
go.
was that before or after Angie's latest comments that were on the issue?
But I haven't looked at the issue actually recently.
It's after. It's after that, because Angie's comment was made in November 18th, so that's roughly 1 month after that, and it was made because we had that meeting because of her comment to
Right. Okay. So
go through the feedback.
I watched that video and I didn't get a good sense of whether or not she felt like those concerns were answered, or if there was some. It seemed like the end of that, it was still the ball being put on our side to maybe answer a couple things.
Yeah,
I didn't get the sense of that being like, oh yeah, this answers everything. Okay, good to go. Bye.
No, yeah, no, not quite that cut and dry. I agree, David. I think it was more. We kind of like the direction you're going in. Want to see more. Proceed with what you're doing and just keep us informed. Was the reading that I got.
And there was conversation around the whole aspect of it being demo versus tutorial, wasn't there? And Dries confirming that he could see how much benefit this could bring in terms of being a demo of Drupal, showing off core capability, and reaching those users who are thinking about adopting Drupal. It's that whole onboarding conversation.
Yep, and we also agreed that we could try to tackle both of them, but it makes sense that the demo is the main purpose of this idea.
Mm-hmm.
But that we could also use some tools to create tutorials included in the installation profile.
In my experience working on a creative level with Dries over many years, until he actually sees something, it's not really, all discussion is just discussion until he sees something in front of him. And, and I think, at least as far as he's concerned, and I think Andrew is a pretty visual person as well. But at least as far as he's concerned, a good visual impression goes a long way. And I think that, so I think when we come to the next stage, if we have something, that sort of sells the concept of the market in a way that looks very contemporary and and sort of touches the things I touched on, I think, in our last meeting about, this is about like maker movement and, local kind of foods and like all kinds of things that are really, really, very, very much in vogue and in getting a lot of sort of attention these days. And it's not like a kind of like very kind of podunk kind of like, I mean, it's all how it's visualized. It could come off two very, very different ways.
Yeah, I agree that visualizing is required, but there is so this is an idea, so we should minimize the amount of work we put into creating ideas. Like the effort shouldn't be too much.
Right.
Like I agree that they cannot agree that we will put this into Drupal core, or say they cannot do that level of sign off for us before seeing something.
Yeah.
But what I would like to see is that we sign off on this idea and agree that these are the problems that we want to focus on tackling, and then we create another issue where we actually figure out how are we going to tackle these problems.
Right. What I'm saying.
Same thing we did with the installation profile.
Right. Yeah, and I understand.
Basically.
What I'm saying is that we've done a lot of talking, and we need to get to some visualizations fast, right? And show something, even if it does not have to be a final design. It's just a sketch, a kind of a vision of something visual that gives an impression of how cool this could be, without going into all of the detail. because because that is definitely going to sort of cement, I think, the path forward using this model and this scenario that we've all been talking about.
And I have a question on that front, if I could. The conversation I think you mentioned in that meeting, Kevin, about discussing other scenario ideas as well. Is this locked down now? Are we looking at the farmers market, or would you like are you thinking that the ideas might want to sort of play around with a few aspects of this, especially if we're trying to think about how, if we're going to choose a scenario from the design perspective, how it might support. There might be the opportunity to support a theme design where perhaps it could be refactored more easily if that becomes a future requirement, which was one of the issues that was raised, obviously, prior to that meeting anyway.
Right. I don't know that. I think that the concerns in that direction, Keith, were pretty much were dealt with by a lot of people, and I don't think that we necessarily need to have that as a key factor of what we do in terms of it being able to be refactored. I think a lot of people, Gabor and others, were very clear that if it's going to be a really good demo, it's going to be pretty hard to refactor it into something else.
Right.
But in terms of the visuals, I think what I'm saying is that before we go any further down the road of designing anything or going further into the sort of the model or the content or anything like that, that we should sort of comp up the two ideas. I mean, or if we want a different one, we can do that as well. I don't know what other people thought of the idea that I had sort of sketched out of the record label. But just a single page, sort of high-level visualization of each of those, bringing that forward and saying, look, here's a kind of a visual look at the two different models of that we have been thinking about. What do you think? That's my feeling, is that we should get to something visual rapidly. And get it in front of product managers so that it's not just words, so that we've got some kind of a swag at, oh, okay, now that I see something, it's easier to make a decision.
Yeah, I think that the idea of sketching out some ideas comes with some benefits, especially if they are just kept as lightweight sketches, because we can start to think about how this thing's going to appeal. And what reach it has in terms of what it's actually going to demo. I mean, the thing is that Core can be used to demo an incredible breadth of capability, but it's how it's actually implemented. How do you take a field and actually do something really clever with it, and yet it's just a core field, and that can come through if you take the recipes idea. That might come through from some kind of approach using ratings, but without actually using a ratings module. It could be sort of a range of ideas that just come through from playing with the idea of the scenario, but also looking at maybe just taking the time to think about what scenarios we could actually consider in case there is opportunities to grab in terms of getting that broader reach. That is one of the things that came up,
right,
in terms of target audience and how it appeals to their world, whether it's the ambitious site, whether it's the startup, whether it's the corporate wanting to do some really basic author editing, and the different types of user as well. I mean, that's one of Drupal's real key strengths, isn't it? Is the different types of user that it can be used for. You can be talking about authors 1 minute, but then you can be talking about community the next, effectively consumers of the site. And that's an incredibly important thing to show off, I think.
So, Keith, what do you think about the idea of you talked about sketches. We have two sort of models that we have that have been discussed right up to date, right, that could potentially be sketched out. We could talk about another one, but I feel like there's a lot of thinking that's already gone in. I don't know. Do you have another model that you feel might be strong as well?
Well, I'll be honest. I was racking my my brains about this over the break, and I did wonder whether publishing would be a really interesting one to consider, because you can go straight for the fact that you could be designing a site where you're presenting both the publisher and their product. So I was thinking about the recipes, because you were talking about how recipes are copyright free. Over here we've got the BBC Good Food site. That's a Drupal site. It's a magazine. In that case, I'm not referring to it from a design perspective. I'm referring to it from a model perspective. Yeah, you've got those sort of the presentation of content on those two levels, both the sort of the more corporate side, if you like, of the publisher, but also the product. You've got the opportunity that you could design incredibly rich product content, and that would keep the theme more subdued, potentially, which is why I was thinking about it, because it makes the theme potentially a lot more generic in style. So you could have an incredible amount of energy coming from the actual, for example, just one magazine's content being mocked up. But actually the theme is incredibly raw, if you like, very dry. So I thought that might be an interesting one, because it also spins off into the community aspect. You can have, you're promoting the actual product, but also you could have a members area, so you're showing off that community side. In a way, it's similar, I suppose, to what a music publishing site could be. But I did wonder how you'd get around the music, if you wanted to get music in there as well, how you get around the kind of copyright aspect. But
yeah, that's a good point. So
all of them, really.
It's definitely something that falls in the realms of, this is a industry vertical that Drupal serves a lot already, and it's definitely that is something that makes it very interesting. I definitely agree with everything you've said. I mean, could you rough out a model for that, or have you already been playing around with that?
No, I haven't yet. It was just literally just an idea. I sort of taken on board really what I've been learning from this process from the start. Really, is not to just sort of rush on and make sure that we're, grabbing this opportunity to just discuss the ideas out, and hear what everybody thinks, really. But certainly sketching something like this out from my perspective, wouldn't be a problem. To come up with just a couple of examples, both farmers market, as you know, I was already playing around with that idea when we were doing the playing around with that scenario from a sort of sketching perspective, just to help inspire how we were approaching the content. But it was interesting because that one did go very localized. It was very much based around the UK market straight away. So that was interesting, how the scenario itself drove a particular feeling and a particular context. But it wouldn't have to. It could have been made more. Certainly could be made more generic, for sure.
In the realms of I mean, since you kind of put yourself forward to to take on sketching things out and getting ideas on paper. I don't want to impose my concept and say, oh, I had this record company idea. What I would say is go ahead with the market and the publisher, and let's get something visual in front of Dries and see what he says. Dries and Angie as well.
Are there other designers here who'd also like to do some sketching? Is it something that is of interest?
So I had discussed this internally at FFW about doing that. So we could potentially, again, this was a few months ago, but we could potentially put some design hours into that if it's something that people were interested in doing. Our creative director, when I talked to him about this a few months ago, seemed interested in doing that. We could potentially get multiple people involved. We just have to have another internal discussion about that. And it would probably be more helpful if we knew that there was a particular direction that we were going, as opposed to just, like, if we're still deciding on what, whether it's going to be a marketplace or publishing or something like that, it might help for that to be decided already before getting people involved, because it would be, something that we would do internally. So they would want to try to tackle it as efficiently as possible.
With a strong brief, and a strong. I mean, on that level, I'm certainly happy to sketch, because obviously it's certainly those two scenarios I've given thought to. The music label one is interesting, really interesting as well. That's actually my old career, so it'd be great if to do something around that, certainly from a personal perspective. But it's just, I wonder how you get around the content problem.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I do agree with the publishing idea. I kind of prefer that over the record label. I think it's a really good idea, and it is sort of integral to Drupal's sort of marketplace. We deal with a lot of publishing companies, and that might naturally lend itself even to decision makers and demoing and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good for me as well. It sounds like it's something that we can build things around, and it should also be a good example. Like it's something that a lot of our clients or possible users relate to.
Yep, publishing is how I got into Drupal, so that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I also think that it's in a visual way, it's more agnostic or a more reusable stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I would also think that would be easier for generating default content as well, isn't it? Because for that part of the initiative, aren't we, or whoever's working that, aren't you guys essentially going to be making new content?
Yeah.
From scratch, right? So wouldn't something that's essentially a fake publishing site be a little easier to creatively write for than thinking of what pages you might just add for this this produce website?
It could be easier. Yeah, I mean, things, every time that you get into this sort of, like, I've gone down this road of, like, several times already, working with demo content team or demo framework team at Acquia, and any scenario that you come up with, generating the example content has its own, difficulties, because you run into, well, we need to make sure that we have, fully, fully open source imagery, etc. And there's lots of, and then the writing has to, you can't just plagiarize something. You've got to, like, you got to actually write something. So there's challenges in any scenario that you have. But I certainly think that, I certainly agree that that the publishing one is promising.
And from the point of view of showing off what's going on in core, what got me thinking as well is just seeing some of the workflow, workspace, media, those initiatives, and the author experience improvements going on there. Because obviously we're talking about showing off rich publishing, that's what this is about. So being able to bring that effectively into play in some way. I know that's possibly crossing over a little bit into the tutorial aspect, but we kind of touched on there's a lot of overlap. touched on that in that meeting, didn't we,
Mhm.
Kevin?
Yeah.
There is overlap for sure.
Mhm.
And I could imagine this serving as a great way to actually surface some tutorials on very specific topics as well.
Mhm.
That would also be a great showcase for layouts and the efforts there.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Sorry, I missed that.
If we can, depending on what parts of that we have been able to get into, in even in just as experimental at that point. Yeah, because we could, and I don't know, I don't remember whether we talked about this before, Lowry, but we could conceivably in the install profile, the demo install profile, enable. We could enable modules that are experimental if we wanted to.
Yeah, we did discuss that, but we also be careful with that because of the experimental modules can be like changing and they can be a little bit more fragile because this is the demo, so we don't want to kind of like too shaking down so that it's like not a good experience for the new users. So we have to be careful with that, like between like how many experimental modules are we going to enable, like stable modules that we have.
Yeah.
In Drupal.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, but if there is something that we are doing very well, it makes sense to use them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also some, because of like experimental modules can be also pulled out. So we have to also prepare for that somehow.
Right.
That we can't depend too much on like a single experimental module.
So, one question that comes up, and I'm sort of, so like just to sort of put up, like round out the discussion that we just had. I know Lowry had said we would talk about theme, but we early on veered off into content model. But so Keith, are you cool with sketching out both some things on both Market, and you already have things that you've done in Market or on this on the publishing idea, so that we can get some visuals that will be sort of a decision point?
Yeah, I think certainly just from the perspective of it being decision point and pushing through the concept, so that it just immediately makes sense to everyone that's taking a look and seeing what we're proposing here. I'm very comfortable with that, and whatever happens after that is fine. It doesn't matter. In fact, it may make sense that we do just from this point of view of speed, just keep it limited to that sketching stage at the moment, because there's probably projects that we've got where we can sort of borrow some of the content temporarily just to present the idea. Mm-hmm. Some sort of brochure work we've done or whatever for the publishing side, and yes, exactly, we've already got some sample stuff going on for the farmers side of it.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I think it's just encapsulating the idea and showing a little bit of the breadth of it as well, even if that does sort of leap over into a more sort of wireframe presentational style. Mm-hmm. For some of the sort of what we could show off in terms of core capability, because that's exactly what we want to achieve.
Yeah.
Yes. So are you planning to also make some some visualization of like how it looks eventually, or just like documentation of the idea in general on content?
So you broke up a bit there, but I think you were asking if it was visuals, right?
Oh. Yeah. Did we lose Lowry?
We lost Lowry.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think that we need to get something visual in front of Dries and Angie to make to just sort of like to sort of end the sort of discussion about the content model so we can move forward with the theme.
Yeah, and I think as much as we possibly can as well, bearing in mind we are just sketching, but to get something that looks really good, you know, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I agree.
Now we've got two Lowrys.
Hello. Sorry. So for some reason my Wi-Fi got cut out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
That happened.
So I was asking from Keith, I don't know if you heard me or not.
Yeah.
I was just asking, like, if you were planning to if you're planning to make some visualization of like how it could potentially look, and also like some kind of an idea of the content model and how the content could look like.
Yes.
Just that I didn't fully
There's a short
understand like
answer.
what we're actually like planning, like what is the outcome of this planning.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm happy to do that. If everybody feels that will be helpful, then I'm happy to do some sketches that are visual, that present what, for example, the front page of a publishing site, or the front page of and the front page of the farmers market scenario would look like, and some probably more wireframe based sketches of how core capability could be demonstrated through, you know, the extension of the scenario, and you know, how it works as a site effectively.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good for me, and we just should keep it as light as possible to make sure that we don't spend too much time on that, because it's just very early, like sketching. So
yeah, and that's what I was saying. I think I'll be able to just drop in, obviously get permission first, but just drop in some content that perhaps we've produced before for some of our clients, just to speed it along. It is just literally a sketch. This is how it could work.
Yeah, I like that.
Yep, I like that as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that so that's awesome, Keith. One of the things that occurred to me, you know, as David was talking, is that you know, we definitely, I mean, I like the publishing angle in terms of it showing off Drupal functionality, but it occurs to me that there's, you know, that there what we really want to do is we want to show off authoring experience. And one of the things that arises for me is what are the bounds of what we are going to theme and what we're not going to theme here. Lowry, I'm wondering what your thoughts on that are, because like we could potentially theme, you know, the edit module toolbar. You know, we could potentially theme, you know, the quick edit. We could potentially retheme contextual links. We could potentially retheme the tray. We could potentially retheme, you know, we could potentially reskin, you know, the CK editor. There's lots of things that have to do with the experience of using Drupal. You know, particularly when it's on the front end of the site, that could be themed by a front end theme. What are your thoughts on that?
Is that Lowry you're asking,
I think
Kevin?
we lost Lowry. We'd lost David and Lowry. David's back.
I lost internet.
And the whole internet is like something is like all day I've been having problems. I don't know.
It's Wi-Fi in my office.
We're waiting for Lowry to come back. He dropped as well.
I'm just thinking through what you're asking, Kevin, and how much the out of the box part of this plays into that. You know, if we go are you asking that we go further than out of the box?
Well, I think so. The question is, you know, if you want to present like if you were building, look at it this way, right? If you were building a site or a distribution, you would potentially do quite a lot of things to theme components that are used by authors and administrators, like quick edit module, like toolbar, like contextual links, like all of those things, menus, things that are administrative tools and not necessarily just not necessarily just the front end theme, but things that appear while the front end theme is the theme that is the active one. So my question is, I guess, how far do we want to go into that realm?
I guess I didn't hear everything because my Wi-Fi got cut out again. I guess you were asking like how far should we go in like on the administrator interface on the front end team itself, or
Yeah.
were you?
Yeah,
Was
exactly.
it just like on the implementation or on the design
Well, on
or
both.
both?
I mean, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So do we, like, for example, do we theme quick edit module? Do we theme things like that?
I think eventually we could end up teaming a lot of the admin features on the front end, but I don't think that should be the first priority that we have necessarily, because I think we want to start with the minimum viable product. And if we like provide support for every module in core, it's going to be a substantial amount of work for us to do. So for me, the vision, at least in the beginning, was we only like provide like the front end team, and then we can figure out what is the most important after that.
Right. And in fact, that is kind of the direction that I'm thinking. I'm not thinking that we would try to theme everything in core, or that we would try to theme indeed everything that puts any administrative stuff on the front of your site. What I kind of was thinking, though, is that if part of the goal is to really show off what Drupal is capable of, then spending some time focusing on the author experience would probably be good.
So would an example of that be if, let's say, for example, we were going with like a publishing scenario where not only have you got
And
product, but
create the front end team first, and then figure out what to put on top of that.
Yeah. I can see what you're saying. Sorry, you and Keith were talking both at the same time, but yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think it could be valuable. I think it's something we should keep. It's something that we should keep open as a possibility as we start to think about the scenario.
I think we already said that we were going to theme a node page, a form at least. I mean, I don't know if that's the way the path that you're thinking on, or maybe going forward.
Well, I think that's interesting, but I don't know how many people actually. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I don't know how many Drupal sites actually use the node add in the front end theme.
Yeah, I guess it might be useful to see how a web form works. A form, a standard form. I mean, we thought that it's useful to see how a form can be themed, but I don't think we went further than that.
Right. It's a good idea. It actually, now that I think about it, it could really, it definitely would. So it definitely would mean that we would need to spend time and focus on theming forms and theming form elements, which can be tricky. But also rewarding in that we could show a really good, smooth author experience, and just general kind of user experience. Yeah, that's interesting.
In terms of the capability thing, it's still surprisingly a question, or it surprises me a little that it's still a question that comes up quite often when we're effectively in those early stages about talking about what Drupal can do with clients. They still ask, "Okay, can I create a form?"
Yeah, and there's two slightly different things there, because we're talking about theming the node add form. If you have the site configured to show the node add form in the front end theme, but that would also entail theming form elements that are on the front end of your site, which would obviously enable a web form as well.
Yeah, sorry, I thought I heard Christina say web form. Sorry,
she did, but I think that's like that was the idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but it's like, if we theme a Drupal form, then that's also going to show people how a web form could be themed if we theme it on the front end of the site.
Yeah, I guess the idea wasn't decided yet. I mean, it was more a proposal, like just theme some forms. What forms do we have? Okay, a node adding form. So let's go for that.
Mm-hmm.
So
there are also forms that are more commonly used on the front end of the site, like the contact form, for example, which would also show off, form elements on the front end of the site, and it's a nice feature, to put in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's at some point we should do a list or something about some stuff. At some point we should decide what things we should theme. I mean, in a form, what things should be in a form, but I'm not sure if right now I'm not sure. I don't know what things will be the best ones. I think that until now they were only proposals, so I don't know. And I think almost an idea is good right now.
Right. I think, Lauri, what do you think about like coming at it from like two different angles at the same time? Like, for example, you guys could potentially, suggest these are features that we really want to show off with the theming, right? Here are some things that really that Drupal excels at that we want to include, so that this demo is really has impact, right? And then that's coming at it kind of from the opposite angle of the content model, which is, here's the content model, and then we create the things in configuration that serve that. But if we have this sort of sense or list, maybe we could put together a list of, here are some of these sort of modular functionalities or entity types or whatever it is that we think would benefit from being themed really nicely in a demo and show off Drupal very well. We could figure out how to work those into the content model.
I guess it's more defined. It will depend on what we decide. I mean, if we decide a farmer market's website or any other stuff, it will be more useful to define that list.
Right, but what I'm saying, Christina, is that we could work, like either a publisher or a farmer's market could both have nodes. They could both have nodes edited on the front end of the site. They could both have a contact form. They could both have a themed, in-place editor. These things are not sort of mutually exclusive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Christina, go ahead if you were about to say something. But
no, don't worry.
Yeah, so I was about to say that I think it makes a lot of sense, especially given the fact that we are now considering that this is a demo. We are building a demo. And most important part of the demo is to like know what you're demoing. So I think we should figure out like what are the parts that we really want to demo on this,
Yeah, exactly.
like what we can show off.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Oftentimes, yeah.
And then
Go ahead.
and create that kind of a list, and then use that as a tool also on the like while you're building the content model.
Yeah, maybe we can just put together a a shared document on that, and then we can all comment and contribute to it.
I can create one.
Cool. Yeah, I was going to say in demo framework, oftentimes our goal has been in the past at Acquia has been not just what we want to show off, but what we want to hide. What don't we want to show? Like we don't want to show permissions. Let's get as far away from permissions as we possibly can. Or there's several other things that are like, oh no, that UI really we need to keep away from that because it's scary, like views, for example.
Well, I guess the first step would be to agree with what will be the purpose of the. I mean, what will be the if we will work about the farmers market or about the publishing? We said the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the first step will be that. And the second one will be, like you were saying, what is great Drupal on for that? And let's do a list depending on that. I mean,
right. Yeah, I think the two things can run concurrently with one another. They don't have to be they don't have to be linear. We don't have to do one and then the other. We can do them at the same time.
That's fine.
That'll give us more velocity too.
I definitely am in favor of making a list. I would be very cautious, though, about the idea of getting into the node edit forms, simply for time reasons. Those things are not very easy to theme, and I can imagine us being here for another year still trying to get this thing done.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, I know I've been in that exact kind of hell because, I've been working on writing the CSS, and I'm not a really, a great CSS writer. I actually am I have great trepidation of people like Emily looking at my CSS, which is going to happen, and criticizing it. But I've been in that same sort of world of trying to theme Drupal forms, working on on settings tray, which can have any kind of form element in it, and
But I agree with David, but I think it still makes sense to create a list and figure out the most important things, because then we can at least make some kind of prioritization. So it makes more sense to know like what are we going to demo than just like try to figure it out on the go.
Mm-hmm.
And types.
So we can also try to figure out like what is what causes the least amount of work for us to do and gives us the most value.
Yeah, that's true. But David, to your point though, also we can configure this any way we want to. So we don't necessarily. We could create a node edit form, for example, that configures away a lot of the metadata and sort of presents a node edit form in a kind of a very simplified version that that might well be the kind of like approach of a media company that didn't want to give their authors a whole lot of options of how they can configure a particular node, but just title, body, tags, and maybe authored on or something. So it's not necessarily we don't necessarily have to theme everything that's in a form if we want to put a form on the front end.
Yeah, agree with that. Yeah.
And also with the list, I think types of user is going to be interesting to map out as well. That certainly came up in our conversation, didn't it? Sorry, in the, just before Christmas, and in previous meetings, that we've been having just about how this demo, how this sample content is going to work with the different audience types it's going to reach. It's a number of levels to it, really. You've got the fact that it hopefully will look absolutely fantastic, or rather it will look fantastic, and be really convincing. But also the fact that it's demoing Drupal core, just what core can do. And there's all this richness there just with core, which obviously means you're going to have site builders diving in, hopefully. And they are going to be taking a look at views. They are going to be taking a look at the permissions and all those areas of the site to see how this thing actually holds together, I guess.
Well, once they cross the sort of threshold from from the front end theme into the admin, all bets are off. We can't really control how that works, but we can at least make the front end demo really well.
Yeah.
Okay, so next step is building that list.
Yes.
List and sketching.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
What do you think, Kevin? Should I try to email the product management for any specific feedback at this point, or should we wait till we have the sketches?
I think we should wait.
Okay.
Also, keep in mind that there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of sort of frantic activity right now around getting things into 8.3. So that's going to be taking a lot of people's focus right now. Like, there's a lot of people trying to get issues reviewed and issues committed. We have like 7 RTBC issues in the outside in queue alone. So and that sort of deadline is coming up soon. So yeah, I would hold off until we have something.
Okay, let's do so. I guess we are done from this week, and we will meet again next week.
Cool. So you're going to share are you going to make a Google Doc or something?
It's on the Slack. There's a link on the Slack
already. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Cool.
Okay.
All right.
See you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.